Welcome again to Cottage Talk. I am Russ Goldman. Joining me right now is Tony Gold. This is another episode of the Player Rating Show. It's of Fulham's 2-1 victory against Wolves. Tony and I did a full-time show recently, and now we're following this up with doing the Player Rating Show, which is exclusive on the Cottage Talk Patreon page. Podcast is. I am doing a one-off today to introduce others to this show, which I think is phenomenal, that I do each and every week with Tony. So this is live on YouTube, on X, and also on the Cottage Talk Facebook page. So if you want to hear this as a podcast version, please do check out the Cottage Talk Patreon page. I would really appreciate that. I also want to mention real quick, like I said, please check out the Cottage Talk Patreon page, and please also check out our YouTube page because we're trying to get the numbers on that. Please do like and subscribe, especially like this episode. That would be fantastic. Okay, so enough of that, Tony. Let's get to it. It's been a couple days. I just want to get your opening thoughts on this victory. How are you feeling?
Yeah, listen, it was a great performance for us, given what happened Saturday against Palace. Everyone wanted a response, and we got one. So always tricky on a Tuesday night, especially against a side that got a good result at the weekend against Bournemouth. They were going to be well up for it, and you know what? Fulham came out the traps, revitalised. Silva made some brave decisions, changed it around, and fair play to him. It worked, and Fulham dug in and put in a very good performance to get a good result.
They sure did, Tony. And listen, we're going to be talking about all the players, but we also will be focusing on Marco Silva at the end of the episode. We're going to be rating him. But I did a show last night. I did a show, post-match show, and I basically said that Silva won the coaching battle. I think this is a huge part of the story because we were critical of him after the Crystal Palace match, but I think he really gave this a lot of thought, and I think he caught this team by surprise, Tony. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think they were expecting, I think they might have been expecting a couple of changes like we all were, to be honest, because Saturday was so flat and, our performance lacked energy and enthusiasm. So I was expecting a few changes, but to be fair, no one saw the changes that he made and as many as he did. And that can always backfire us, but thankfully it didn't. The players that came in looked like they've been playing for months and they all performed to a high level, which is why we got a very good result.
And what's funny about this, Tony, we'll be going through the players' performances. We've seen them play three at the back before. We had a decent result, but even you said the first half against Chelsea wasn't the greatest. First half here was okay, but it was the second half playing this formation that really stood out.
Yeah, I think certain players look much more comfortable in that shape, in that formation. Anderson is definitely one who played centrally, of Diop and Cuenca. And actually, he looked much more comfortable, much more composed, had a bit more time on the ball, could pick his options a lot better. And that certainly worked for him in that shape and formation. And obviously, with Cesc coming in as well, gave us a little bit of a different dynamic down that side. So yeah, look, all in all, it was a good performance with the amount of changes that Silva made. And now, obviously, we've got a bit of a break from the league with a big cup game on Sunday, which hopefully he'll approach in the same way.
Absolutely, and I cannot wait for that on Sunday. Little revenge game. I'm very excited about it. All right, my friend, let's get to it. Let's go through rating the players, and we'll end with rating Marco. Let's start with Bernd Leno. And what's interesting about him is that if you look at it overall, I would say that he had a few things to do, but really wasn't as active as I thought he would need to be. First half, yes. Second half, we've talked about this, that they really shut down their main player in that second half because he wasn't really as active as I thought he was going to be. But overall, what did you make of Bernd Leno's performance here?
Yeah, look, he was a captain for the night, put in a good performance in terms of what he had to do. Yeah, it was rather relatively quiet, but listen, his distribution, his kicking, obviously his communication to the back three players and making sure that everyone was in the right areas at the right times. For me, he's got to be a 7, Russ, because he did what a captain does.
I was thinking 7 as well, Tony. All right, so that gets us going talking about Burn Leno. Let's move on. Let's talk about Issa Diop. And Issa Diop has not played much lately. You and I have talked about we want to see more Diop. Well, we got to see him in this match, Tony, and I think he was very good. In fact, I'm going to say that I'm going to give him an 8. I thought he stood out here. What are your thoughts?
100%. Yeah, he looked like he's never been away from the team for as long as he has, to be honest. Came in, was solid. I think, again, playing alongside Anderson and Cuenca, worked for him. He was very physical, won most of his challenges, to be perfectly honest, and actually was one of our stronger defenders on the night. So I agree with you, Russ, an 8, definitely.
Okay, so let's go on to Joachim Anderson. And we had a little back and forth with our friend Suhail, who actually did View from the Hammy last week, and he had a nice little comment for you about Anderson. I'm going to give you first crack at this. Give me a rating for Joachim Anderson.
Yeah, look, he's lacking a bit of consistency in his performances, Russ, is the honest truth. And unfortunately, with the price tag that comes for him, there's a certain expectation. And, the truth of the matter is, up till now, he hasn't quite hit the price tag that's come with him. So he's had a couple of good performances. He's had quite a few poor performances. Tuesday night against Wolves was one of his better performances. I think it definitely suits him playing in a 3 because he doesn't get exposed as much with his pace, with his lack of pace, sorry. But look, on the night, I thought his distribution was great. He was composed around the ball, made good choices. So for me, Russ, he's going to get a 7.
Okay, I was thinking the same thing. And I think that's a fair rating for Joachim Anderson. Let's move on to Jorge Cuenca. And I've been speaking to a few people about him. There have been some that weren't impressed, and then there are others that were very impressed. I was actually impressed from a player, Tony, that has not played that much with Fulham because of the players ahead of him. I thought he did fairly well. I'm going to give him a 7.5. Solid. Obviously, he comes off, but I think he could have finished the match with no problem.
Look, it's tough for Cuenca because I actually think he's technically very good. I think he's one of our better technical players, actually. But the truth of the matter is, playing at centre half, he's way down the pecking order unless we get major injuries. But actually, I quite like him.
So do
and
I.
In fact, I wouldn't mind having a look at him at right back, Russ. I really wouldn't.
I believe he's played left back, right?
Yeah. But actually, I think he can play anywhere in the back four. I really do. I think he's technically that good. Obviously, Silva's got the option. He's got that versatility. But on against Wolves, I thought he was, again, relatively solid. Thing about him, he's got a bit of pace. He always gets round and covers well. So again, I'm giving him a 7, Russ.
Okay, excellent. All right, let's move on to Timothy Castagna. And every time we rate him, I feel like we're rating him against a player that is injured. We're talking about Kenny Tete because his level was so high. I actually think that this formation suited him a little bit better, playing a wing back. Tony, what are your thoughts? I'm going to give him a 7 as well.
Yeah, I think a 7 is a fair mark for him. To be honest, he comes in for a lot of stick because he isn't quite up to the level of Tete, or hasn't matched what Tete was delivering up until he got injured. But look, he's always solid, Russ. He's got a mistake in him every now and then, and sometimes he struggles, in forward areas, but he's in the team to defend first and foremost, and I think he's relatively solid. And we're lucky to have him as a backup. He made a very important tackle in that game on Tuesday night, which stopped Wolves getting an equaliser. So in that regard, I'm going to give him a 7, Russ.
Okay, excellent. All right, let's move on to Ryan Sessegnon. And I said this to you a while back, Tony. I thought that eventually we would start to see Ryan Sessegnon be a factor for Fulham. I believe that. I just think that he had a long road to get back to being himself again based on all the injuries. The crap that he dealt with Tottenham Hotspur was, I think, it could have been a mental issue. I'm not talking about the fact that he had to overcome a lot. Coming back to Fulham, I think was a wonderful thing. And I think now we're starting to see him return to the player. I'm not saying he's back all the way, but he's coming back. I thought Ryan Sessegnon was very good in this match. I'm going to give him a 7.5.
It was an excellent performance from somebody that's hardly played this season. To come in and have the impact that he did is full credit to him, Russ, and obviously the work that he's doing on the training pitch. First goal for Fulham in 6 years, I believe. So that was a great moment for him and a great moment for the team. I thought his distribution was excellent. Playing in a difficult position against a very good opponent, by the way. Nelson Semedo's no clown. He's a good player. And I think Sessegnon got the best of him quite a few times. So, yeah, in terms of his overall performance, a lot of people thought he was man of the match.
Right.
I didn't think he was quite man of the match, but he was definitely up there, and I'm going to give him an 8.
Okay, excellent. All right. Let's move on to Sander Berge. And again, player that we're both very high on. Obviously, we're going to talk about Lukic coming up next, but Berge, I think, is very solid. This is a different formation for Berge and Lukic, and I thought at times it was a little weird or uncomfortable. What are your thoughts about his performance?
Yeah, it wasn't a standout performance, but what Berge does so well is he's like the clock that keeps ticking. It just keeps everything ticking, everything moving. Wins his individual battles, always in the right time, breaks up, always in the right place at the right time, breaks up play well. And I thought he was just effective on the night, Russ. When he broke up the play, he moved it, he got us on the front foot. So for me, I'd give him a 7, Russ.
Okay, I was thinking the same thing for Berge. All right, let's move on to Sasa Lukic. And Sasa Lukic, as we both know, Tony, now will be out for the next 2 Premier League matches, picking up that yellow card. But as we did our show, which was great, we had a wonderful comment that brought up something very interesting that I kind of agree with the matches after missing the Brighton Hove Albion match and missing the Spurs match. There's a lot of important matches coming up after that, and he'll be free to play. I think he will have that freedom, and I think maybe picking up that yellow was basically stopping him a little bit from being more aggressive than he normally would. So, yes, he's going to be missing 2 matches. Yes, it's probably affected some of his performances, Tony. What do you make of his performance in this match?
Yeah, I don't think it was one of his best, Russ, to be honest. But I think you're right. I think the yellow card was hanging over him, and it was only a matter of time. Thankfully now he got it. We move on. We can get that out of the way. I think, obviously, for me, the next 2 league games are massive for us in terms of our European aspirations. So to not have him for those 2 games actually is quite a blow. But look, at the end of the day, we have to make do. We're going to have to, crack on without him. His performance against Wolves was average, I thought. Nothing spectacular. Again, he's in there with Berge. He keeps things ticking over. He wins his battles. Works hard in there. His work ethic, you can't complain. But for me, it was a 6.
I was thinking the same thing, a 6 for Sasa Lukic. Okay, let's go on to the player that we talk a lot about on Cottage Talk in general, especially on the player rating show, Andreas Pereira. Now, honestly, Tony, I thought Pereira played very well. I'm going to get us going on here. Just the position that he was playing, the importance that he was playing, setting up that first goal. Again, he was set up partially from Muniz, but then he had to do a lot to help out that situation and worked hard the entire match. I'm going to give him a 7.5.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, Russ, to be honest. He's a player that I've certainly been highly critical of this season, certainly from his set put pieces and dead ball situations. Yeah. But look, I thought he was a man on Tuesday that had a point to prove. He's a man that now realises that his place isn't a gimme in the team, and that when he's out there, he has to perform. And actually thought he performed very well, like you said. Was instrumental in a lot of good things that we did going forward. Good assist for Adama. So yeah, look, I think ultimately his performance deserves a 7.5.
Okay, excellent stuff, Tony. All right, just doing one final thing, and then we'll get going. All right, let's move on to Adama Traore. Interesting performance from Adama. I have a comment that I'll be sharing in just a second. What are your thoughts about Traore?
Look, the thing with Traore is his energy, his strength, his willingness to run at players and get at players. And, he was a constant threat throughout, really. So, look, I think he's a player that's playing with confidence. He's getting stronger and better. Obviously, Saturday against Palace didn't quite happen for him, but I guess we just have to take those performances as and when they come. And for me, he's always a threat, even if he has a quiet period and he's not quite involved in the game, or he has a couple of moments where he loses the ball. I think he's a really important player for us because of just what he brings. So for me, I thought against Wolves he was excellent, and I'm going to give him an 8, Russ.
I was thinking the same thing. I want to give him an 8 because I think he was very good in this match. And what do you make of his role in that formation?
Yeah, I liked it. I liked it because it gives him a bit more freedom to go and express himself. And ultimately, you don't want him doing, the donkey defensive work. You want him free and able to go and express himself in the final third. So the more you can free him up, the more space and time that you can give him, it's only going to be an asset.
I totally agree there, my friend. All right, let's move on from Traore and let's talk about my man of the match, Rodrigo Muniz. And this is, again, really good news for Fulham Football Club because I think you and I have talked many times. We want Jimenez to be the starter. But I think I understand why Marco went with Rodrigo Muniz, and it worked extremely well. The kid works so hard, Tony, and he has skill. He was involved with both goals, but it was more than that. I think he was integral to Fulham's victory. I'm going to give him an 8.5.
My man of the match, Russ, as well. I'm going to give him a 9, actually.
Okay.
I thought his performance was outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. He took his goal brilliantly. I thought throughout the night, his work rate, his willingness to run, into areas, to make space and to get into areas where he can get on the ball and make things happen. He was strong. He held the ball up. I mean, he gave the Wolves back players nightmares at times. And I know we've been talking about getting the striker in, that we're a striker short and what have you. But let me tell you, this lad is developing really quickly. And I expect to see him be a starter for us next season, Russ. I really do. I think they'll work with him from now until the end of the season. And then over the summer, they will really get into him. And I think we're going to see a completely different Muniz next season. I really do.
I'm going to tell you a player returning, I think, is going to have a huge impact on Rodrigo Muniz. That's Willian. I think Willian being back as a leader, being behind Rodrigo Muniz. I remember last season when Willian gave him the award, I believe, that award that he got. And I could see how much that meant to him. And I think that these Brazilian players, they all help each other out. So for me, I think it's something, and we'll talk about Willian coming up. We both looked at this like, well, we wanted another striker. They bring in Willian. But you know what? He's going to offer Fulham other intangibles. And this is one of them. And it's leadership and being able to help his teammates. And I think he's only going to be a benefit to someone like Rodrigo Muniz, Tony. I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got a quite a large Brazilian contingent in the squad. And
it's kind of nice.
For me, Muniz looks like a player and a person that's, number one, enjoying his football. Number two, that's settled in, really well. And also seems to be enjoying life in England and maybe adapting now to the weather and the different climate and the food. And, because it's very, very different to Brazil living here, So yep. I think it does take time for players to adjust. But like I said, I think just in the way that I see him developing and parts of his game now that he's getting stronger at, and obviously learning from Raul, having him around has obviously been a massive help. So like I said, this time next season, I think you could be seeing a Munez that's going to be hitting 15 to 20 goals next season.
Wow. That's fantastic. Wow. That's big time there, Tony. Okay, let's now move on to the substitutes. Let's start with Alex Iwobi. You and I have talked a lot about him in the this show, the player rating show. And for the most part, the majority of the season, we're just basically talking his praises throughout these episodes. But I think, as you've said this, and I agree with you, a lot of minutes on those legs, right? And I think it's caught up to him. I like the fact that he came off the bench. I think he was solid. I'm going to give him a 7. I don't think he really did much wrong. And I think he was a help at the end of this match.
Yeah, he's a player that desperately needed a rest. I mean, Saturday showed that, one of the leggiest players out there at the moment. So that would have done him good to come on for that, 25-minute period that he did. Definitely helped us get the result. I'm going to give him a 6.
Okay.
Because obviously when you've got that experience coming on, he didn't do too much, but he did what he had to do. So ultimately got the rest that he needed and contributed towards a good result.
Okay, excellent. Let's move on to Willian. I've already just mentioned him, and I talked about the intangibles with him, the leadership. But the one thing that I want to talk about before I get a rating from you, and then I'll share my rating after this, is what I watched from him, especially when Wolves were, let's just say they were getting a little bit nervous because they were down and they were trying to force the issue a little bit. This guy kept it calm, Tony, and I think that calmness was a huge asset to the end of that match. So I'm curious your views of Willian's performance here.
Yeah, do you know what he did when he came on, Russ? It's his composure.
Yeah.
To settle things down, to keep, as you say, a calmness around the ball, making sure that we kept possession, moved it when we had to move it in order for us to keep possession in the right areas. And that's what he did, Russ. And that's experience. You can't buy that. That's a player that knows the game, knows what he needs to do, comes on, calms everyone down, and just makes sure that we keep good possession of the ball. And that's what he did. So for me, I give him a 7.
Okay, I was thinking the 7 as well. Okay, let's go on to Raul Jimenez. I'm curious what he was thinking before the match when he wasn't starting, obviously playing against his former side. But you know what? I thought he tried very hard here. He wasn't a player that made an impact. He just, unfortunately, could not score. He had 2 decent opportunities, Tony. Where do you lie on his performance here?
Yeah, I mean, look, again, he's a great option to have to come.
Think about what we had on the bench here.
Absolutely. Yeah, listen, our bench was really strong. And like I said, that's what saw the game out for us.
Yes.
Being able to bring those players off the bench onto the pitch. Again, very experienced, knows what he's doing. And you're absolutely right, Russ. He could have actually had a hat-trick when he came on. So, listen, good options to have. I'll give him a 7 because I thought he always works hard when he comes on and again, did exactly what you'd expect from him.
Okay, very good. All right. Now let's move on to Jedi. What's interesting here, like you and I were talking about, Ryan Sessegnon did nothing wrong. Ryan Sessegnon played well, but he hasn't played a lot of football. To have Jedi come off the bench with that kind of energy, to offer that kind of pace, Tony, again, with the calmness of Willian and the presence of Iwobi, you add that to the pace of Robinson. And I will also say that he had composure as well. In that situation, that's one of the things that was impressive about that second half, composure. I think that's the best word to describe it. Jedi actually showed it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, again, to have someone like that come off your bench with the energy and the legs that he has, I mean, it's a great outlet to have. And like you say, carried the ball well when he needed to, made good decisions. Another player that would have done well to have a bit of a rest, and he should be nice and energized for Sunday. So yeah, 6 for me, Russ.
Okay, very good. All right. Let's move on now to Calvin Bassey. Wasn't on that long, and you and I talked about that. This was a curious move to bring him on because I don't think either one of us thought Cuenca did anything wrong. What did you make of Calvin Bassey here?
Yeah, look, he was only on for 13, 14 minutes, yeah, whatever. I was actually sitting there thinking, sometimes I don't like changing the defense when you're winning. I just sometimes get a bit nervous about it. And I was thinking, you're taking Cuenca, bringing Bassey on. He's a little bit cold, needs a bit of time to get into the game. But to be fair, it didn't really affect anything. He was solid enough, but to be honest with you, difficult to really, assess what he did because he wasn't really on the pitch, that long. But yeah, a bit of an odd one, but maybe he just, Silva didn't want him to go all that way and not get a few minutes. So maybe that's why he did it.
That could be it, Tony. It was strange to me, but I understand, why you are thinking the way that you're thinking. Why are you taking this player off? Why are you changing your defense like this? But he did, and it didn't hurt them. And that's the bottom line. Like I said, I think maybe it was to get some minutes in him looking towards Manchester United, which we'll talk about briefly at the end of this episode. But let's end talking about the players. We're done with that. Let's now talk about Marco Silva, Tony. And we did the player rating show after the last match against Crystal Palace. I think either I gave him a 2 or 3. We were around there, right? And I thought that was a well-deserved rating based on what happened in that match. We were both disappointed. Well, what I've learned from Marco over his time at Fulham is that his plan A can be extremely dynamic, and he can change things when we're not expecting it. So he is not predictable at the beginning of the matches in certain situations. This is one of them because I don't think any of us saw even a possibility that he was going to do this, but he decided to match up formation against Wolves, and it worked, I think, really well. And he made several changes and had this dynamic bench. Every lever he pulled, Tony, I thought was the right one. 9 for me.
We know what a good manager Marco Silva is and how lucky and blessed we are, to have him. And we've also talked about what will take him to the next level of becoming a good manager to a great manager.
Yeah.
And why these managers eventually become great is because they make decisions based on being brave, fearless, and stepping outside their comfort zone. And that's exactly what Marco Silva did on Tuesday night. Having come off the back of arguably our worst performance of the season on Saturday, to then go into a game on Tuesday night away against Wolves, who've come off a great result.
That's right.
To not only make the changes that he made, but also then to change the system. That's a brave thing to do, Russ, because it could have backfired. It could have gone horribly wrong. It didn't. And that is kudos to Marco Silva for doing that. And I'd like to see him do that more often. And so for me, everything he did absolutely worked. And you have to give him a 9, Russ, because it was a genius stroke from Marco Silva. And that is what's going to catapult him into being great if he carries on making decisions like that and winning football matches by making those brave and fearless decisions.
Right. And my one criticism, and this was fearless, okay? Like you said, this is something that I don't think anything was expecting. I think Pereira, the manager of Wolves, was not expecting this. And I think they had to adjust to this because there's no way that they prepared for this. I don't think that they could have prepared for that formation. Not that a manager can't adjust during the match, but we've talked about this. So for me, this shows what you and I have been talking about. The one thing, Tony, that I would like to see when things aren't going well is that he adjusts more during the match. When things aren't going well and there's an opportunity, like you said, to make a brave move, do it earlier. Do it earlier. That's my only criticism of Marco is that I love the game plans. I love the chess match. Just there are times where I wish it was during the match, if you get where I'm going on that.
When you're working with elite level players, they can adapt to, and they should be able to adapt to any formation or changes. Kudos to Silva for doing it. Kudos to the players for responding to it, Russ, because, they might not have responded. It could have gone, as I said, it could have gone horribly wrong. Yep. It didn't. And now what that performance has given Marco Silva is a headache for Sunday. Because
we're going to talk about that.
Yeah. Yep. So, but look, it's a great headache to have. And what that result's done is it's put Fulham back in the mix. And, it's the hope that kills you, Russ, as we always say. So we've got that hope hanging around again. And I'm sure after the Tottenham game, we'll be sitting here, crying into our soup and all that kind of stuff. So look, we just got to enjoy the roller coaster ride, and you're only as good as your last game, and our last game we were good. So that's how I look at it.
Okay, well, the roller coaster ride. Let's hope we have a smooth ride on Sunday. So before we end this, just some quick thoughts on this upcoming match. What's interesting here, and I actually work with a couple of coworkers that are Manchester United supporters, and you can imagine the kind of thoughts I got from them. I got one that was very negative about Manchester United. Then I got another that was basically sounds like he's living off their history. Oh, of course we're going to beat Fulham. There's no question about that. And the one thing that I will say, Tony, going into this, you and I talked about it. This is not a premier team of Manchester United. This is a team that really has no identity right now. They have a lot of injuries. Is going against them. Fulham should be able to beat this team. But the question is, will they? Okay, it's there for them. I can't fathom losing to this team 3 times in a season, Tony. I can't fathom it. And I think that there is a point to prove. There's a lot on the line, and emotion will play a factor here, and I hope it works to our advantage because we have something to prove here. It goes back a couple years. Pereira was there for that match at Old Trafford. There are a lot of those players that were still there. So they're going to have some feelings about that. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity for Fulham Football Club to really give themselves a chance in the FA Cup. If they beat Manchester United, we'll see what the draw is. And I know I'm jumping ahead. But if they do win, look out. Because I think that's a major sign because you would be getting over this hurdle. And the hurdle is Manchester United. For whatever reason, it has been a hurdle. And I want to see them get over it. And actually, it's been both Manchester clubs in the FA Cup that Fulham have struggled against for whatever reason. Obviously, they're good teams. But what do you make of this match? What are your first thoughts as we head into this match on Sunday?
Yeah, you made some very good points. I think, look, for some reason this season, Manchester United have been a bit of a bogey team for us. And like you say, can't quite put your finger on why and what the whereas. Look, Man United are a team that's going through a massive change, massive transition. Okay, they look very disjointed. Their manager, you can't judge him on this season because he's coming in, he's got a load of jigsaw pieces and he's trying to fix it and move it around. Look, the bottom line is I watched them last night against Ipswich, Russ. Yep. I think defensively they're very poor. And I think that's where Fulham really need to target them, to be honest with you. I think Maguire, Yoro and De Ligt are there for the taking. I think they've got one of the worst goalkeepers in the Premier League.
Yeah, I really do. I agree with that.
Onana is terrible. And I just think that they are very disjointed. The thing about United is, unfortunately, they've got some very good individuals. Those individuals can win them a game. Garnacho, Fernandes, Xerxes, Gallup, they're still there. And they are players that, given time and space and given an opportunity, they can hurt you. Fulham, the key to Fulham's success on Sunday, Russ, is we need to defend collectively well out of possession of the ball. We need to close those gaps. We need to make sure we don't give them any space. We need to make sure that their ball players like Garnacho are literally closed down. Fernandes closed down when they get the ball. So they're not allowed to play. They're not allowed to express themselves. And if Fulham can get on top of those players, then they give themselves every opportunity to win the game on Sunday. If they don't, then it's going to be another really tough game. And unfortunately, you're going to see another result that we've seen against them this season because they're just one of those teams that for some reason at the moment, they just have their claws in us. And we just need to find a way to break that. And I think the key is us defending well on Sunday.
I agree, Tony. And I know it's a strange example, the one I'm going to give you, but because they're nowhere near this level. But how Fulham played at Craven Cottage against Arsenal, where defensively they were solid. I'm talking about Fulham. It made it difficult on Arsenal. But I think they need to have a kind of performance where they're frustrating the opposition, even like how they frustrated Wolves in the second half. If they can do that and give themselves a platform to beat this team on the break, then I think we have every opportunity to win this match. In fact, I think that we should win this match. That doesn't mean that we will. That team is there for the taking, but they have the individual ability to hurt us. And we've seen it, and I've seen it too many times. We can go back to Xerxes early on in the season, okay? There's no way they should have lost that game, but they did. You got that. And then, of course, you have what happened at Craven Cottage. They hung around. It was a horrible, horrible game. Horrible. Okay? But you gave these guys a chance. Do not give this team a chance. Frustrate them. I agree with you, Tony. Be difficult defensively, and then let your players offensively take advantage of their poor defense. And I just want to have one comment about Harry Maguire. You and I learned by our talk with Mickey Adams that he gave him his first start, and Mickey says, you can blame me. I just thought I would mention that.
Do you know what, Russ? It'll be interesting. I mean, will Silva set up with a 3, or will he revert back to the 4? That's also going to be key. And also another really key point on Sunday is the Smith Rowe Pereira role. Whoever plays in that position on Sunday needs to be a star plus.
Totally agree. That's actually 2 very good points, because when you look at this, and I want to give credit to the Fulhamish podcast. I was just listening to it before we went to do this show, and they were going through the formation. What will it be? Will it be a back 3? Will it be a 4, Tony? What will it be? And I think there's arguments to be made for both. The only reason why I'm leaning towards the back 3 is because it just worked against Wolves. And guess what? Manchester United play that formation. Match up against them. And oh, by the way, I watched them lose to Crystal Palace, who, again, did something similar. They played against the back 3, but they were aggressive against them. I don't know. I could see an argument to play the back 3, Tony. I know I was speaking to a fellow Fulham supporter that says, no way. Got to go back to our normal formation. Where do you fall on this?
There's counter arguments for both, Russ. I think, and a lot will be how Man U set up. Look, if they set up how they did against Ipswich, Højlund playing up front, look, he's struggling. He's a player that's lacking in confidence, doesn't have much form. I would back a back 3 to deal with Højlund all day long. The problem with that is if he plays Garnacho and Xerxes slightly deeper, and I assume he's going to start with the same side. I can't see him changing it.
Right.
You know, the danger there is Garnacho. I'm a big Garnacho fan. I think he's a terrific player. I really do. And I'm amazed that he doesn't start more for Manchester United. And he's the one player that always seems to do well against us. You know, he always seems to be that player. And we have to manage him on Sunday because he's a real danger and a real threat. But I personally would go with a 3 because I just feel that Anderson seems a lot more comfortable playing in a 3. When he plays in a 4, I don't know. He just doesn't look as comfortable for me. Just doesn't look as comfortable. And it's a really key area for us on Sunday, Russ.
Totally agree. That's why I'm leaning towards that as well. But I understand the argument to go back to the other formation, our normal formation. But we're going to have to see what he decides to do. And I think that's going to be a factor in this match with Fulham. It's going to be the formation. Okay, great show, Tony. I will have a preview of this Manchester United match. I'm working on something special. We'll see if I can get a special guest. So if not, regardless, I will have a preview show. I do want to mention before we end the show one more time, please do check out the Cottage Talk Patreon page. This episode podcast version will be exclusive on that page. All these episodes of the Player Rating Show are on there. It's something that Tony and I have done all season. I wanted to introduce the show to others who have not seen it, so that's why we went live on YouTube, Facebook, and also on X, so you could watch the show, because I think it's a very good show that Tony and I do. And if you want to hear the podcast version moving forward, because we're doing this as a one-off, it will be exclusive on the Cottage Talk Patreon page. Also mention, please do subscribe and like on YouTube. this episode, I would highly appreciate it. Really trying to build up the numbers on YouTube. We're getting closer to the number I would like to get, which is 1,000. It's difficult for people to find the episode when we only have right now 777 subscribers. It's not bad, but the more subscribers we get, the bigger audience we're going to get on YouTube. I watch a ton of YouTube videos, and this show does not come up on my feed. And part of it is because we don't have enough subscribers. So it doesn't cost you anything. Please do subscribe on the Cottage Talk YouTube channel. Okay. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Cottage Talk. He's Tony Gold. I'm Russ Goldman. Thank you as always for watching and listening to Cottage Talk.